This today is a bit different because I want to recommend a book. I am always on the move and I'm always trying to do something different. It's hard for me to just sit and do nothing for a period of time because I feel like I'm not accomplishing anything. So even when I do read a book, typically it's in short segments. I'll read a little bit here, a little bit there, and it takes me a while to finish it. And a lot of the time, if it's not well written, I won't finish it at all. I'll just never get around to it. I remember I was on active duty in the Army. I was stationed at Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland when I finished my first book, which sounds ridiculous to say, but it was the first time I ever had a book that I liked enough that I was reading very large sections of it at one time. And then I ended up finishing it within a few days. And I had that feeling of like, I wish this kept going. I want more of this, which I'm sure is a feeling a lot of people have had if you're used to reading, but it's something I'm just not accustomed to. A lot of the time, either the story's not very interesting or it's too predictable, or the author's style of writing seems kind of pretentious, like they're trying too hard to sound like a sophisticated, experienced writer, and it just doesn't flow very well. For a variety of reasons, I just typically didn't finish books, but I do have a collection of books. I've gathered up over the years, ones that I found particularly satisfying to read or particularly useful, or I have a sentimental attachment to. You can see some of them behind me here probably, but it's not often I read a book that not only do I enjoy, but I cannot wait to recommend it to people, which is unusual because I've never recommended books to people. It's not a thing I do. I understand that in today's world with YouTube and social media and everything else, people typically are not recommending books to one another. But I got to tell you, this is a book that I highly recommend to everybody. This is by Matthew Walker, PhD. It's actually his first book, which makes it even more impressive. It's his very first book, and it's an absolute home run. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that the entire time I was reading this book, during every chapter, I was actively thinking, I can't wait to try and convince everybody on the planet to read this book. It's called Why We Sleep, Unlocking the Power of Sleep and Dreams, which was a New York Times bestseller. And unfortunately, I've put off making this video, even though I read this book a while ago, simply because I can't think of a good sales pitch. Once you read it, you'll understand completely what I mean about how good this is and why everybody should read this book. But when you are speaking to people, unknown people who you've never actually met, and you don't know how to get through or connect with every individual person, and you're trying to think about how to convince them to look into something or do something or read a book or watch a movie, and unfortunately the subject is sleep, it's a book about sleep, it seems impossible to make a good sales pitch. But I cannot possibly state clearly enough, this is a monumentally good book. It is an amazing book. Even up until like I was last heavily researching the subject of sleep, probably about 15 years ago, most of the stuff was still pretty much just hearsay, theories and ideas, but we didn't really for sure know anything. And that was one of the most frustrating aspects of the topic. You would look into anything related to sleep. In my case, I would specifically, when I was researching it probably 15 years ago, I was looking at it from an aspect of performance. How sleep affects your performance as an athlete, because that's what I was into. That's what I was specifically looking at. And unfortunately, it came to a point where anytime I would discuss the importance of sleep as far as athletes go, I had to admit that what I was saying was basically just opinion. It was anecdotal. It was based on my personal experience, what I was guessing based on my experience, based on anecdotal evidence, because there was really no hard science to back anything up. And we couldn't figure out why science was having so much trouble cracking this code. And it turns out that in the past 15 years, the past 10 years I've been in Taiwan, but in the past 15 years or so, maybe a little more, there has been a total change in the landscape. There has been a monumental shift in our understanding of sleep. And so many new techniques and processes have been developed to study and analyze this subject. One that leads to another, and those two lead to a third, which leads to a fifth and a tenth, and it's like a snowball effect or domino effect. Suddenly, it was like the floodgates opened, and we understand so much of it. But unfortunately, it's a subject that's hard to sell to the general public. A lot of the information that is in this book, for example, was information I was totally unaware of, which is crazy because I do a lot of research and I'm always looking for updates to things. And somehow I was completely unaware of so many of the studies that they directly reference in this book. I was completely unaware of the breakthroughs that have been made, of the new techniques that they're using, of the understandings that they've established in this area. And it was just mind-blowing. I'll read the back for a little bit here. Named a best book of 2017 by London Evening Standard, Financial Times, Business Insider, Greater Good Magazine, The Stranger, and NPR. The first sleep book by a leading scientific expert, the director of UC Berkeley's Center for Human Sleep Science. Why We Sleep is a groundbreaking exploration of sleep, explaining how we can harness its transformative power to change our lives for the better. Sleep has long been one of the most important but least understood aspects of our lives, wellness and longevity, until an explosion of scientific discoveries in the last 2 decades began to shed new light on the subject. Now, preeminent neuroscientist and sleep expert Matthew Walker vividly demonstrates the vital importance of sleep, which, among other functions, enhances our ability to learn and make new decisions, recalibrates our emotions, restocks our immune system, and regulates our appetite. Clear-eyed, fascinating, definitive, and immensely accessible. Why We Sleep will entirely transform readers' understanding and appreciation of sleep and dreams. It is mind-blowing, the amount of information they put in here. It's not just, you better sleep or else. They even get into everything from, again, mental health to just physical health to athletic performance. It gets into overall life expectancy. It gets into age brackets even. It discusses the actual breakdown of what they now understand to be differences between the kind of sleep and the amount of sleep needed throughout your life, from infancy to elementary school, high school, into your 20s, 30s, 60s, whatever. They have such detailed information on exactly what is happening in the brain and body during these processes, what helps to increase the good and decrease the bad. They even have it down to such a science that they now understand how a specific frequency of noise will disrupt a certain type of brainwave function while you sleep, things that you would otherwise not be aware of. It gets into temperatures, like physical temperatures, and how that affects hormone secretion in your brain while you sleep. So much good information. Even, again, with aesthetics and in terms of what you may be more interested if you watch this channel, is it even discusses things like fat loss. As you heard me say a minute ago, it does briefly, right in the opening line, discuss things like, heart disease, brain issues like Alzheimer's, diabetes, things like that are directly related to a scary degree because they go into great detail. It's not hearsay. It's an actual direct cause, how these things are caused by a lack of sleep. But it even specifically gets into things that, again, are maybe interesting for people who are just trying to stay in shape and look better in the short term. They discuss in detail how they discovered definitively that somebody who has not gotten enough sleep but does an hour of cardio, for example, for health or for weight loss, versus somebody who has not done any cardio, but they sleep for an additional hour it has been proven that getting the additional hour of sleep actually leads to more fat loss and greater physical benefits than having less sleep and doing an hour of cardio. So if, for example, you don't care about your longevity or health or anything else, you're just trying to get into a smaller pant size, simply forcing yourself to stay in bed a bit longer and get some extra sleep will have profound effects on that. I've been talking about this a little bit too long now. I was hoping that once I turned the camera on, I would get some profound divine inspiration and I would know exactly how to discuss this subject, how to make a good sales pitch, how to get you interested. And unfortunately, I've probably failed at that. But all I can say is this is just a phenomenally good book. Again, it's not just dry, boring scientific data. It's not just anecdotal evidence. It's not just repeating the same thing over and over again in different ways. As a matter of fact, this is true. I remember as I was reading this, it's one of the few books that I just couldn't stop reading. I was just so interested to continue reading. It was fascinating, so well written, and the way that the information it gives, from anecdotal to scientific to actual stories of experiences, like everything was just so fascinating that I was getting physically tired of reading. I was feeling exhausted and kind of like, okay, I should take a break. And as I'm reading, I would start to subconsciously think to myself, okay, I think you got the deal. You know what this is about. You get it. We get the gist of this book. It's okay to put it down and finish it some other time. But I would continue reading for a few more lines. And the next thing I know, 5 or 10 minutes had passed and I was sucked in and just enthralled. And I was actively thinking, oh my God, I am so glad I didn't put down this book. I am so glad I didn't stop reading before I got to this part. I had no idea this was coming. And what's crazy is that kept happening throughout the entire book, from the first chapter to the last. Right when you think you've basically, yeah, okay, I get it, all of a sudden a whole new, just in your face, wow, I didn't see that coming. Well, I'm so glad I kept reading. Just wow. This book is so good that I have the physical copy. I also purchased a copy for Kindle, and I also purchased the audiobook, which the audiobook is actually narrated by Matthew Walker, and he does a fantastic job. It's really nice to listen to. Please, if you care about yourself at all, your own well-being, please take a chance. Just put any of your reservations aside and please read this book. If you have children, my God, especially if you have children, because it goes into a whole section of that, please, for the love of your children, read this book. If you have loved ones, anybody you care about, please read this book. If you are interested in how to better society as a whole, please read this book. Because it gets into different societies and different cultures and their sleep patterns and what they've derived, the information they've derived from these different sleep patterns of different cultures from around the world. I mean, it gets into everything. It's really phenomenal. It's so good. Anyway, it is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. It's his first book. He hit it out of the park. It's phenomenal. I cannot recommend it highly enough. As a matter of fact, I'm probably going to start recommending things in future videos, books, whatever, things that I have found to be particularly helpful and beneficial. And this is the number one. This is the very first one I'm going to talk about. Now, hopefully I get better at this as I do it more, but I am sound like a broken record. I am becoming redundant. I know it, but please read this book. It will likely change your life. And I'm not joking. I'm not exaggerating. This is not hyperbole. This could very well change your life. So, there it is. Please read. Until next time, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.